and I forgot because I'm a bad person.
Well,
And
if
we'll
you
go.
then nobody can complain about it. Not that
That's true.
anybody complains about it now, but
We'll
nobody.
go. We'll go live on Facebook. Share on your timeline. I got something to share on my timeline.
We ain't sharing nothing.
I'm preparing. It says they're preparing your live streaming preview.
We're preparing to prepare. Enough with all the prepare. Just go.
Preparing for ludicrous speed. Oh man, I'm supposed to be.
What?
Well, my daughter's gonna come by and get something, and
What time is she supposed to be there?
any minute now.
Sorry,
What episode is this? Episode 5?
Yes, I believe it's episode 5. Episode 5, The Strange Interruption. The episode where Kirk just talks for 10 minutes while there's no Steve in frame.
Yeah, that's true.
About absolutely nothing.
Try to resolve this.
Oh, now our meeting's live with Facebook.
Oh man.
And he gets up and leaves. I like it.
Oh, this dramatic entrance. So I make a dramatic entrance to episode 5. I did it. And it was seamless. Seamless, Kirk.
Hardly noticed.
Welcome to a surprise episode 5 of Fandumbs with me, Steve Wood, and him.
Oh, this is me. Yeah, Kirk Johnson.
Yes. Good evening, Kirk.
Good evening, Steve.
Welcome
Well,
to your show and mine, but our show.
Well, yeah, we've been a little bit late on this episode because it's been kind of rough, I think, for both of us the last couple of weeks.
I'm betting rougher for you than me, knowing all the hard work you do as one of the essential workers in this nation. As a college professor, I'm still pretty lucky, but yeah, I'd bet harder for you than me. I'd be okay saying that.
Well, let's hope that this evening helps solve a lot of those issues for anybody who even might watch.
Yes, it is 2020, and we have a lot of problems to solve. And one of them tonight was our technical stuff. We solved that, so that's positive.
Let's also get into solving pointless opinions about things that probably nobody cares about but us.
That's true. No idea if anyone's watching right now. No idea if we're even on right now. I don't know.
It does say that we're live on Facebook on my little thing, so okay. I think we're actually live.
Says you're live.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Okay.
The only thing we decide is when will then be now.
Now. Right now.
Okay. I thought it was soon.
No, that was just then. Soon is later.
So confusing.
Yeah, I know. That is the true meaning of Christmas, Kirk.
What's the meaning of Halloween?
Kirk, tonight's sponsor is Equate.
Okay.
Are you having redness? Do you need a reliever? Try some tetrahydrozine HCI. Compared to original formulas, Walmart brand Equate is brought to you by Walmart. Proud supporter of Fandumbs unofficially. And Walmart.
Man, we need to get some of that Walmart money.
Get there today. It'd be nice if we had a corporate sponsor. I won't lie. I shop at Walmart. I don't know if you've seen it, but at Walmart, they've done this sort of retro vintage He-Man line.
Oh, yeah?
That is ridiculous, and it's $15 a figure because usually figures are like $20. They're overpriced. So $15 a figure, how was I supposed to say no? I mean, I should have said no like a grown-up, but how was I supposed to?
Well, you can't. I mean, it's He-Man.
So
I mean, he makes the world go
My
round.
daughter may be stopping by for this. She may make a guest appearance. Kirk, what are we going to talk about tonight on Fandumbs episode 5?
You know what we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about books to movie adaptations. Also, perhaps TV shows will make an appearance. And, you know, the good ones, the bad ones, how some of them, you know, and whether or not some of them have actually helped franchises or hurt franchises.
I like it. Before we start, any news from fandom that is worth just talking about for a hot second?
Honestly, though, I think really, I don't know if you've got a chance to watch it yet. Have you watched the new trailer for Doom? Oh boy.
I was never as big a Doom guy as you were, so when I watched it, I was like, I pictured myself watching you watch it, and I thought, I bet he's happier today than he was yesterday.
Yes, very much so. And, well, again, you know, a lot of it is the big problem, and we'll just kind of jump into it. The big problem, because Dune is also a really good example of this. The biggest problem that a lot of books go to movies is that the amount of content, you know, what's in a book is always more than you're ever going to get on a movie screen because there's just not enough time.
So funny you say that, Kirk. I teach a theater history class, and we are reading Aristotle, who had a lot of thoughts about what makes a good tragedy. And he loved epic poetry, which is really film. Or, I'm sorry, books, frankly, novels. And he loved Homer. He loved the Iliad and the Odyssey like most Grecians would. And he goes to great detail in the poetics to make sure that people understand that there's things you can't do in epic poetry, the Iliad and the Odyssey, the Trojan War, that in theater you have to know that you can't do that on stage. And so he was a stickler for that. He it's so funny. This is 2,500 years ago. And he's saying, you know, epic poetry is great for what it does, and it can jump time, and it can jump locations, and it can jump plots, and you can have multiple plots and multiple locations, all kinds of characters. But in theater, you got 2 hours of my attention, get to the story. And, you know, 2,500 years later, I think we're still living with some of these debates, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, a good example of that would be like people that have problems with a 3-part Hobbit. And the fact that there was stuff added to it. And I'm like, okay. Well, first of all, it would have made 2 really good movies for sure. But if he had enough to do 3, why not? Because I think you get more of the book in there. Imagine if he would have been able to do more than 1 movie per book in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, or as Netflix has shown us, that with 8 episodes, you have a pretty good, you know, 45 minutes to 55 minutes a clock, 8
Right.
episodes. Like I'm watching The Punisher season 2. I'm finally catching up on Frank, and I've really enjoyed watching it as a series. And the length of time being taken to tell a story, sometimes they jump the shark a little on things you have to tell, because 24 had this problem. The show 24 had this problem where you just had to have Kim trapped in a bear trap, you know, with a cougar after. Speaking of cougars, I see your little feline showed up.
Yes.
And but you know, when they redid 24, and I think they made it like a 12-hour episode, so time becomes a real challenge on what you're going to tell. So why don't we jump into this, and why don't you start us off by talking about what makes, in your mind, what works well and why? What works well and why when we're adapting books to television or film?
Well, I think trying to, again, I guess you can go back to Conan the Barbarian. Originally, what's his name? Oliver Stone wrote a screenplay for Conan the Barbarian. That was the original screenplay. The original screenplay was Conan in the future fighting nuclear zombified mutants. Because all he did was he kind of took the names, and that was it. So when Millich came in, he rewrote the script for it to be fantasy, and he still kind of just kept the names, and actually they kind of always kind of hunt and pecked for names and for situations to kind of do the movie rather than one set story. But overall, I think that actually worked out better. I think it's better when you try to stick to the material that as presented rather than trying to say, well, I want to do my take on it.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of times their take is garbage, like Michael Crichton and Congo.
Ah, yes.
You and I both walked out of that movie just upset.
That was very disappointing. He's a good example of when it works well. I did enjoy Jurassic Park, the book, but I found parts of the book a little kind of yawn, like, and there was parts of the film I really liked better. Spoiler alert, I like Malcolm sort of making it through the end because it's Jeff Goldblum. I thought it was better to have Alan not like kids instead of liking kids, because then he grows as a person. He's trying to keep Tim and Wonder Girl, the girl knows how to use Window DOS and whatever this is.
The hacker,
yeah. I always wondered if Crichton's book, The Testament, would ever get made into a film. You familiar with The Testament?
I say one of those I actually haven't read, which is surprising.
Yeah, I know you've read a lot of his stuff, but yeah, Congo didn't work well. I was thinking a good example of material. This isn't really a book though, but material that didn't work was when Stallone took on Dredd, and then when Carl Urban did Dredd. The difference of understanding your material. So, what are some recent examples of shows or films where you feel like the artists either really understood the material or when they deviated from it? And here I'm tipping my hand thinking of Two Towers. When they deviate from it, it didn't hurt the original source material. If anything, it probably just strengthened it in the genre of film or television, knowing that you're not going to necessarily get it the way that a book unpacks it. Can you think of examples where people really nail it, or when they add their artistic flourish, it doesn't hurt it?
I'll just go right in on it. I'll just say Game of Thrones. Now, the interesting thing with Game of Thrones is the author, George Martin, sat down with the two, and this is what I think is so funny. It's everybody's like, these guys destroyed the show. But the funny thing is they sat down with George Martin before he agreed to let them do the show, and he asked them one question.
Yeah.
How does it end? No, I think it was two questions.
It was who is Jon Snow's parents?
Yeah, who is Jon Snow's father? Or who are his parents? Yeah. And how does it end? Yeah. And they got both of them right. So that to me, it's like, okay, so, and I guess that was my thing, is I had read the books, then I watched the show, and then I was like, everybody, and I kind of stopped about right at the Purple Wedding, just because I had a lot of other stuff going on, but I was kind of keeping tabs on it. And I've got my own rant on George Martin I can go into some other time. But it was funny because everybody gets upset there in the last season. And I'm just like, what part of this did you miss? When we killed Ned Stark at the end of season 1, after you cast him as Sean Bean. Hi, David.
Hey, David. Special guest appearance.
So anyway, he decides, so yeah, it's like, if he's willing to do that, then, and exactly when was it ever a happy story at any point? And everybody wants a happy ending out of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
I'm like,
that's not going to work for that show.
Yes.
Thank you for my Black Panther picture.
Oh, you're welcome, David. I was thinking of you when the news broke on Mr. Bozeman. I know you love the Black Panther, so yeah. I'll draw you some more if you want some in the future.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Well, you said it, so I owe you some now.
There you go. But yeah, I think that shows that it can be done, because he actually wrote some of the episodes.
Yeah.
Within it. But I think, also I think some of the characterization they were able to do a little bit better, because sometimes, you can write it, you get the Charles Dickens effect, where we've got 15 pages of nothing, 3 pages of action, 15 pages of nothing. So I think by sometimes doing it in a TV or movie form, you can condense down some of the character generation stuff and some of the the overall narration. You can cut out a lot of the excess nonsense and then focus in on what's really important.
Yeah, and I didn't read the books, the Song of Fire and Ice. I know you've read them all, so you're current on what's been published.
No,
Uh,
actually, I have not.
oh, I thought you read at
I
least.
still haven't read the latest one.
Okay.
It came out 2 years ago. I still refuse to read it.
So I know, but you're more familiar, at least with the.
Yes.
I know you've read more than I have of them. I from what I understand from the books and the show, to me, where that show struggled was it just didn't have as many episodes, because that was always a strength of Game of Thrones as a series, was having the 13 episodes seemed to work, and having 2 seasons back to back of short episodes just didn't do it, because it seemed like what they were able to do with 13 was plant some things that would pay off either later in the year or literally early in the next season.
Right.
And that's where I had difference with The Hobbit. I really love The Hobbit as a book. I never really read The Lord of the Rings all the way through as a book. I read a lot of it, but never all the way through. I did read a lot of the Silmarillion. But The Hobbit, I felt was just stretched a little too much the other way as a film, just because they packed so many things in, and the things they packed in didn't quite invest in some of the characters that I felt I was as connected to in the original book. But at the same time, I think some of the solutions they had in Lord of the Rings were interesting because, for example, especially with Theoden and Éomer and Éowyn, those characters I thought got really nice payoffs in the film version. So, what do you think? So, other than just the practical, just like the mechanics of having money and having the resources to do these films well or television shows, talk about that, the artistic tension between the source material and this sort of director's vision. David, what are you doing? Cleaning out a fridge?
No, he's just causing trouble.
We both have special guest appearances by our children.
Oh, hey, all right.
My daughter has come to get this product again. Thank you, Walmart, for supporting Fandumbs. And there she goes. Look at this smart little college girl. Got 100 plus on a Chinese test this week.
Awesome.
She didn't even say it.
I wish I did that.
No clue what she said, but to all of our Chinese listeners, I hope you appreciate. I think she said something appropriate. So,
if not, we'll never know.
Well, we won't. Yeah, and once they take TikTok away, the Chinese will never know what she said either. So.
Exactly. And that was that.
Okay, so what were we saying? We were saying you like books and I don't read them.
Something like that. Yes. You like to burn them? What?
What?
What? I don't know. What were we talking about?
Okay, here's what we're talking about.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's do this. Let's play this game. Give me three adaptations you love. I'll give you just 2 because I'm not as big a book guy as you. And then give me a couple you hate, and I'll give you a couple I hate. Let's talk about the whys and hows. So give me 2. 2 you love, 2 you hate. I'll give you 2 I love, 2 I hate. Give me 2 you love and why.
Actually, I'll go both Crichtons. The original Andromeda Strain, the one from the 70s, and 13th Warrior. And 13th Warrior actually disproves the notion. Love you too.
Bye.
Bye, David.
Disproves the notion that the book is always better than the movie, because in this case, the movie was better than the book.
Yeah.
2 I didn't like. Definitely Congo. Have to go with Congo. That's always usually one of the top ones. And also Starship Troopers.
Yeah. Interesting.
And yes, you can allow me to go off on my Starship Troopers rant if you wish.
Okay.
First, you may answer your questions.
Yeah, actually, I do want to hear this because I love that movie.
Well, I have to separate.
I just didn't read the
movie
book
versus the book.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, so the one that I really love, and I would say I've 80% read Lord of the Rings, which true nerds and fans would tell me makes me illegitimate. But
I am Morrissey because actually I'll let you in a little secret. I've never read Fellowship, Two Towers, or Return of the King because I can't get through Fellowship. Because it's boring.
Yeah, no, it is.
Charles Dickens, again, 15 pages of nothing,
Yeah.
2 pages of action.
Yeah, Dickens does that. Only reason I muscled my way through a lot of Lord of the Rings is because my in-laws had my stepfather-in-law. He had a bunch of Tolkien stuff in his cool
Well,
library.
now as far as read it, I haven't read it. However, I have listened to the audio versions where they've done the full cast audio of all 3 of them.
Oh wow!
Parents have those.
Versions that I thought did well. I didn't read all the Harry Potters. My wife did. I tracked with her through I think like book 3, and then I just was so busy with my career. I read book 1 probably within like a week. She read it within a couple days, and I know she read the whole books. I thought the films did a fine job. I know other people feel differently, but they did. I thought the Lord of the Rings did a nice job with its source materials of film. Like I said, I didn't really like The Hobbit. I liked a lot of the things that could have been in The Hobbit, and Peter Jackson didn't even like The Hobbit. If you watch his director's stuff, you know he
didn't actually want to have to direct it.
Yeah, because Guillermo del Toro would have, which would have been pretty dang amazing. A book that I thought did great. This isn't sci-fi or fantasy. My wife and I this summer finally watched the BBC version of Les Mis, and it was the version that they did that wasn't a musical. So it was, I think it was maybe an 8-part series that the BBC did.
Okay.
I loved it, and I like also, this is probably cheating, but really the version I thought they did great with was Pride and Prejudice with Colin Firth, because I have read Jane Austen. So the BBC sometimes get those really well, but we're talking there. We're not talking science fiction. So
right.
let's. So that probably doesn't matter. My choices were.
Although I will say, honorable mention, if we're going to go kind of older, the Kenneth Branagh version of Murder on the Orient Express. If you have not watched it, I highly recommend it.
So many people. You're like the second person who's told me that this month alone. Okay. So let's hear your thoughts on what you think about fascist soldiers who are trying to save us from cockroaches.
So the funny thing is if you read the book, Starship Troopers is Halo. And nobody figured that out because everybody's like, well, Halo is so popular. It's just one guy versus all these aliens. I'm like, yeah, it was really popular back in the 50s when it was written as Starship Troopers. The problem I had with it was I didn't like the fact that we tried to turn it into Beverly Hills 90210.
Yeah.
And then recently I was watching another documentary and it was about action movies. And they were like, well, he was making fun of fascists. You can see, if you're in on the joke, it's just hilarious. And I'm like, okay, so that just proves you didn't read the book because the whole book was also making fun of fascists. So essentially you're making fun of the thing that's making fun of it, so you don't get the joke. So I think now that I go back and I look at it, I mean, I separate it out because the book is incredible. And it's one of the big 3 books that got me reading period, really avidly reading. But between that and the movie, I just have to kind of separate the two because it's like, there was a commentary on on fascism and all of that was in it. And then, they kind of looked at it and said, oh, well, we'll make fun of it even more. And it's like, no, you kind of screwed it up because, you didn't get the joke either. So it's kind of like Hollywood trying to be too smart for itself.
But that I think, so I think your point is fair because when you watch it the first time, the concept is pretty jarring. I remember being really jarred by that film because of the gore and violence, just how like visceral the story was.
Now, as far as I love the bugs.
Yeah.
To this day, I think those are some of the best done. I mean, when you read the book and then you see the movie, you're like, okay, it's like there's no difference. They did it exactly right. It was really
But
cool.
that is sort of the see, this is great conversation about when 2 great artists come at a shared work and who's going to own it. Because Paul Verhoeven, I think his masterpiece is RoboCop. The idea of, and he was a religious student, so he literally wanted a messiah. He wanted a movie about a messiah. RoboCop literally walks on water. RoboCop literally comes back from the dead.
Right.
And
Well,
then
and also that's another one in the same documentary. It's on Amazon. I'll have to find it and I'll tell you what it is. But yeah, they talk about that one. That was also the joke because they purposely did it so over the top that you couldn't possibly take it in any kind of realistic way because of the extreme amount of the violence.
right. But when you watch it going, this is one of the coolest revenge dramas I've ever seen, and it's RoboCop. And some of his humor, some of his scathing satire got jumped the shark on part 2, and then they just butchered it. And I think that's what happened in Starship Troopers was that because it had the Verhoeven, you know how M. Night Shyamalan always has his signature thing on things. You know, his thing was the cutaway commercials, the sort of cutaway fascist.
Yeah.
You know, these kids are doing their part, you know, and they're stomping on bugs, or that little boy's like, I'm doing my part, and all the soldiers are like, ha, 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 ha. That's the way he did his films. And in that case, I think that he probably, you know, he didn't cast great actors. And so if the joke was to have it be very wooden acting wise, you're really putting a lot on your actors that, and again, we go back to, man, it's right behind me. Lucas was lucky he had Harrison Ford. Lucas was lucky. He's lucky that he put people on film. Alec Guinness is, you know, he had these great British actors. He had Hammer film stars from Britain's great horror, you know, collage with General Moff.
Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing and Alec Guinness, and Harrison Ford wasn't yet Harrison Ford. And he lucked out. He got these like amazing actors to say kind of, you know, dribble. Whereas Starship Troopers, they don't have the best things to say. And Neil Patrick Harris isn't the Neil Patrick Harris we know him to be. And,
right. And it was also, a lot of it was we're trying to do Beverly Hills 90210 in space.
Right.
And we're trying to write this garbage dialogue that's trying to, again, it's like sometimes that, you know, people that aren't naturally funny, they can try too hard to be funny, and then it's just embarrassing, and it's kind of it kind of hurts to watch.
Why are you looking right at me, Kirk?
No, actually what I was thinking of is the best example of this. Now, Ricky Gervais is hilarious, but if you go watch the British version of The Office, he straight plays everything. So it gets to the point when you know it's a joke, but you know that his character has no idea it's a joke.
Yeah.
So he just goes for it. So therefore it's that cringeworthy, you're like, ooh, but it's still funny. Where I think that was what they were trying to, they were trying too hard to be like, well, you know, let's be this way. And it's like, no, you didn't need to do that. And it also had nothing to do with the actual original story, because the original story was Halo, basically.
And the other thing, Kirk, that you've pointed out, and I think this is part of tonight's discussion, is that I think Harry Potter works well as a book and film because the films do capture the meta theme of the books about Harry defeats this horrible enemy through love and friendship and finding a family. Starship Troopers' meta theme was this idea of you can't be a citizen, really, without serving. And the film starts strong with Michael Ironside, you know, this one-armed Michael Ironside really pushing that on the students in the classroom. You know, what makes a good totalitarian regime. And that's kind of the message of the book, if I remember our discussions about this, that it's about
the message
who gets to count as an actual citizen, right?
No, actually, no. The funny thing about that book is it's actually, that is kind of, it's always about, you know, it's very much, you know, it's you got to serve to be a citizen, to do all this. But actually what it is it's kind of this guy figuring out that he himself, that a single individual person can be a hero. Because at the end of the day, he's by himself most of the time. And so there's always this internal monologue where he's trying to figure out, you know, how to do things or what to do. And then he ends up being successful. So really what it kind of says, again, it's kind of anti-collective. because totalitarianism and communism tend to be so much collective, whereas this was, one person can make a difference.
Yeah.
Because ultimately he was the one, Rico was the one who actually captured the brain bug, not his sergeant. So it was the whole thing of one person can make a huge difference, even in such a chaotic thing as war, and even in such a place or a government like, a totalitarian regime.
Yeah, and in the film, it leans heavy into Rico has lost himself. He now is part of the war machine, and he views himself as a weapon. And at the beginning, you don't know how he feels. So I think that film was probably underserved by just bad acting, and maybe just mixed agendas creatively. Okay, so we could probably talk about that film all night. What
Yeah.
what are the films or television shows where it just got really close? I'll give one. I think that It Part One,
Okay.
the film version, recently did a great job of getting right up to what Stephen King wanted. And the second one I thought was garbage, which was funny because he's
Okay.
in it and people keep telling him he plays that shopkeeper and he talks to the Jane McAvoy character who's sort of him about, I didn't like your ending. And he pokes fun at his own endings. I thought that Frank Darabont did a better job with Ending the Mist than Stephen King did. I thought the Mist film was far grimmer and more King-like, and I thought that It Part One did great. I thought that It miniseries there in the '90s with John Ritter and oh my gosh, Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh, yeah. Tim
Tim
Kirk.
Curry. Tim Curry. I thought that version was great. It was super scary, but Stephen King's films struggle with that. I didn't like the new Pet Cemetery.
Well,
Um,
I guess some of that too. I guess where I would come at it, I'll come at it from a sci-fi perspective. Ender's Game. Ender's Game, I thought was close, but the problem is to truly do Ender's Game. If they would have done it like the book, it never would have made it on film.
yeah,
Because they really downplay some of his violent outbursts. And because he actually has some of those kids actually get killed. And so I think that, it led that much more to him becoming guilty about, what he had done to the enemy, but it was close for what it was. So I think there's that part of it too, where, you can make an ending, when you write a book, you can kill anybody you want. But there's also that concept of, especially in American film, of the happy ending. So you almost got to kind of soften it up because it's like people don't necessarily want to go watch Hamlet,
yeah,
where it's basically depressing from beginning to end and there's not really a happy ending to it. People want to have the Wizard of Oz in there.
yeah,
So I think that's a lot of it. So, like Stephen King, he can be super dark, but it doesn't work in film form because people don't want, if they're going to, when the lights come up after 2 or 3 hours, you don't want people being like this. You want them, laughing and smiling and giggling and clapping and everything else.
Well, we got some comments. I'm going to our Facebook Live. My friend
Jack.
Jack.
Do we?
Yeah, my friend Jack, who is an English prof and probably has several opinions about literature.
Has he canceled us yet?
He said, you want to run off the English profs. No, Jack. We don't want to run off the English profs. We just don't want the English profs to try to make films. And maybe the English profs don't want film directors to take good literature and ruin it either. So maybe we just need to come up with our own stuff. Matt Henson put, if Tom Selleck played IJ, so I don't know who IJ is. Who would be IJ, Kirk, from what we just talked about? I don't know who IJ is. If Tom Selleck played IJ, you think it'd be as powerful a story. So I don't know who IJ is. You have an idea who that
Indiana
refers to?
Jones?
Oh, Indiana Jones. Oh, Matt's in a different conversation because Indiana Jones wasn't based on a book.
Where's Dr. Jones? Where's Dr. Jones?
No, Tom Selleck could not have been Indiana Jones, Matt.
No, because the problem with Tom Selleck as Indiana Jones, it would have been the mustache would have been the star.
I know. And the Nazis would have melted when seeing it.
That's true.
That's just weird. That's just weird. So so we'll see if anyone comments. Oh, so Matt said we were talking about Indiana Jones. Well, we were talking about Harrison Ford, and I suppose
that's not he has other parts, you know.
Yeah, but I think Indiana Jones is Harrison Ford. There should be an episode, maybe in the future, season 2. We could have the who can play what, because I just saw something yesterday that said Tom Harding was almost all but confirmed to be the next James Bond, which I don't know why they wouldn't go really young. They've never really gone like a young 25, 26-year-old James Bond. They always keep doing these late 30s, early 40s James Bonds.
Because the one time they tried to go younger was George Lazenby, and well, we all saw how that turned out.
Yeah, but you know, just because you misstep once doesn't mean you can't hit it again. It's sort of like I was reading Adrian Aldrich's comments about he loved doing Solo and couldn't understand why people didn't love it. And the same article had Liam Neeson talking about, you know, he's really proud of Phantom Menace, and Samuel Jackson was too, and they couldn't understand why fans didn't love it. So Kirk, so let's wrap up in this. What would you say is your top favorite? I really love the book and really love the film, so I don't love one or the other, but I'll cuddle up with this book and read it, and I really love this film. They both really nailed it. Matt Henson, we're not talking about Tom Selleck and Indiana Jones.
All right, there's a whole other episode right there.
Oh my gosh.
The Tom Selleck Indiana Jones Chronicles.
I don't think Tom Selleck reads books. He just stares them down until he gets the information out of them that he wants.
He's a lot like Chuck Norris that way.
He is, yeah. Do you see that meme going around where Chuck Norris, it says coronavirus?
Oh, yeah,
he's just sipping it like that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, best book and wonderful adaptation that you love.
That's hard to say.
Or one you would put up for contention.
Well, again, I go back to and again, kind of the whole thing with 13th Warrior. 13th Warrior is actually was a dare that an English professor gave to Michael Crichton, because he said, you know, and this is, you know, back in the 70s or 80s, that you couldn't teach Beowulf because it was boring and nobody wanted to read it.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, challenge accepted. And he wrote 13th Warrior, because 13th Warrior is Beowulf,
yeah,
told from the perspective of this of the Arab character.
Yeah, who's sort of chronicling the.
Yeah, he's an actual guy.
Yeah.
Who was actually in Europe at the time. So he just said, okay. So he took that guy and he said, okay. So here's how he wrote his reports back to the kingdom, and so he wrote the book that way. Well, the book is him basically complaining about the Vikings, that they're all stupid, dirty, and stink through the whole book. And so all the events of Beowulf happen in and around this guy who has no clue what's going on because he's too busy worrying about the fact that they stink. And then they do the movie where he learns the language and gets intermingled in the whole thing. So it makes the story that much better because he's actual participant in the story, not just watching it, not a perspective thing.
Yeah. What an interesting choice, because I do love the Beowulf poem in the myth, and I love the 13th Warrior. It's such a manly machismo kind of dudes with swords. And it was interesting. They don't really take on a dragon. They just take on this tribe, overwhelming tribe.
That was the whole thing. Was he kind of took the supernatural elements out of it and made it, you know, okay, so you can do this. So I thought, again, that's the reason why he's one of my favorite authors.
Yeah.
But I would probably say both. I would say probably Andromeda Strain, now that I think about it, because the original one, not the one with Benjamin Bratt, but the original one that they did was very close to what the book was. And it was one of those things that even when you read the book, you're like, this is scary, especially in you know, this year, about how you fight something that you're not ready for when it's a disease.
Yeah.
So I thought, I think probably those were probably my best ones would be my guess. So I'm going to go with.
I'm going to go the same because I remember I saw Jurassic Park with you. We went to the Claremont Drive-In
Yes.
movie theater, and I just sat there like, man, Spielberg can have all my money. The film was just it was just intellectually it was interesting.
Well, we created our own surround sound, if you recall.
Yeah, that's right.
Sound boxes, so we were shaking the car when the T-Rex
we had two speakers coming in. I thought it was just a brilliant movie, and I thought that Spielberg did a good job of having Malcolm ask the ideological questions that underpin the book. And then I read the book, and I did like it. I found it. Just because I'm saying there's things in the book I didn't like, I read that book in 2 days. That's one of the fastest. I'm not a great reader like other people.
Right.
So there's only 2 books in my life I've read really quickly and consumed quickly. One was called This Present Darkness, which was really huge in Christian circles about angels versus demons. I read it like 3 days. And I think Jurassic Park I read in 4 days. I'm not one of those cool people who can read a novel in 1 day.
No.
I have to say this, honorable mention of how can you ruin something so great? World War Z. I don't know how you take something so brilliant by Max Brooks and then just, don't even make a good zombie movie. Like how do you not make a good zombie movie? That took some skill. Sometimes it really does take
as
skill.
far as bad zombie movies, it really doesn't take that much skill. Because there's been a lot of bad zombie movies, and there's no skill in any of them.
That's true. All right. Well, we're about out of time. So what do we have to look forward to as we wrap up season 1? What do we got down the road in September? And then I'll give a preview to October.
I honestly don't know yet. See, that's
me neither.
That's how much preparation I put into this. I have no idea as yet.
Here's what we do know.
We'll see what comes up.
Here's what we do know, folks. All 3 of you who are watching this.
Do we have 3?
Yeah, I think your partner's watching, and Matt Henson won't let up off.
No, actually, she's not. She's sitting across the room from me, staring at me, making fun of me because the cat's looking.
Oh, okay. Well, that sounds reasonable. In October, I can tell you this: we got 2 episodes in October, both.
Okay.
Lean into what we like to call the greatest thing in the planet, monsters. So, or greatest thing on the imaginary planet. So we got 2 different episodes. So both will be in honor of the great month of October. Which gets us close to the greater month of November, my birthday. And then I think we have a couple episodes in November or maybe November, December, and then I think we're done with season 1. And hopefully by then Walmart will have seen that we use their products.
Right.
We drank a Coke, I think, on 1 episode.
And I think maybe they'll cut us a 10-cent check.
Yeah, and you've got some Avengers there and some Pops.
Right.
I've got Disney money. I've got mine.
We both get Disney money.
We should, yeah.
My Star Wars Avengers.
Yeah. My favorite Disney princess, of course, Princess Leia. My favorite Disney hero is now a tie between Luke Skywalker and Captain America. And my favorite Disney villain is still Gaston, but Thanos is close second. Darth Vader is tied second. So. Yeah, coronavirus. All right. So anything left to say as we wrap up our 5th episode of Fandumbs?
Yeah, tune in next time for who knows what.
Yeah, listen, if we cared, you comment below about your books.
No, it's not that we don't care. It's not that we don't care. It's that nobody comments.
And honestly, folks, we do this for us, and we're not savvy. We're never gonna have a YouTube channel. I don't understand these people have time to do videos. I watch them. Don't get me wrong.
They don't have jobs. They get so many people on YouTube that they get paid by YouTube to not have jobs.
I personally watch them, but I would not want to do this. So
fair enough.
Not for money, but for Walmart. Again, Walmart support us. All right, dude. It's always good to talk to you. So I think that's all of our show for today. Bye, folks.
All right. Later.
All right. I think I've stopped the live stream. I'm going to stop recording.